Hey, what's up, guys? This is Grayson the Dean 221 Nichols, and we're here with another high stakes hand review for elite rounders. And I've got with you today again my friend and student Mike Ender, who was recently playing in this $500 tournament on PokerStars that he had an interesting hand that he saved for us. So, Mike, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. How about you?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. So why don't you walk us through this tournament that you played in on PokerStars last week and give us a little intro to the hand.
Okay, so this is a 530 bounty builder tournament on a Sunday. Uh, it's the beginning, so I think we have 40 minutes in it or something like that. I have about 60 big blinds, and the table is pretty strong. So we have strong players. And on my right, I don't know this player very well, but I've looked him up, and he's a high stakes player, and he's playing very very wide, so very very aggressive. And under the gun, he decides to open three times, which is big already. And I decide to just call here. So
Yeah,
that's my
so
first move. Yeah.
right off the bat, this is a really cool spot. And I'd say one of the most kind of like guttural population instincts I notice is people's tendency to three bet, four bet, whatever, to take the aggressive approach with ace king. Without necessarily knowing why they're doing it or what they're intending to accomplish with that bet, right?
So
One of the things I actually do with a lot of prospective new students, I ask them a question up front. I say it's the first orbit of the tournament. Guy raises under the gun. Blinds are 15-30. He makes it 90. You're under the gun +1 with ace king. What do you do and why? And I would say 9 out of 10 people respond raise. And
hmm
then I would ask all of them why. And without fail, they are not able to give me much of an argument for why they raise there outside of perhaps isolation. And I agree, isolation's a fair argument. When you
hmm
call there, you are opening yourself up to a lot of people calling, a lot of variance, a lot of weird spots, right? But calling also opens you up to some really good outcomes as well, right? Like in this spot in particular, especially this being a high stakes tournament, you might be perceived as, someone just taking a shot since you don't play a ton of these, although I'm sure a couple of these guys recognize you. So this strikes me as a spot where we could possibly induce a squeeze three bet bluff from someone, very likely in this situation, which would then give us a great opportunity to back shove all in with for the four bet, right?
I
So,
agree.
that would be it's a higher variance play that we're hoping for sure, but it's something that makes sense and it's something that we're trying to induce with our ace king call here. It's an intention from our play, right? So I think that's important. On top of that, something really that you need to look at when you're playing, especially against better opponents, is perception, right? And you and I kind of talked about this in our last lesson where you don't want to give away the
Exactly.
strength of your hand in general, right? You don't want to let people know what you have. Like that's going to be bad for us, right? So I think it's important when you have a hand like Ace King that if you're going to three bet with it, you want to make sure it's a spot where it looks like you could be bluffing, right? And I think that's
Exactly.
problematic here, right? Like if you were to three bet to 3,600 here, do you think it looks like you're bluffing ever?
No, like everything you said is totally, yeah, it's exactly how I thought. It's true. Like it's way too strong, I think, to raise there,
That's the key.
and it's actually giving away your hand. Uh, and I think because this is a higher stake tournament, you need to think more about that because you're gonna have less bad like calls.
Yes.
And if you do that in a mid stake tournament and you just call, you're gonna get two, three callers, and then your ace king is not worth anything anymore. While in this case, I expect more a squeeze than a call. Um, and if I get one call, I don't mind in a way. Like it's nothing is gonna happen. Like it's okay. I can still play my hand post flop. But I think there's less chance. There's more chance that someone's gonna squeeze, and nobody's gonna. It's gonna be tougher to put me on ace king. And I think that's the goal of poker. You don't want to like tell what you have. I think if you have ace king on the button, it's totally okay to raise because it's expected for you to raise. But here, it's not expected for you to raise, right? So if you
Yes.
raise, you already are kind of saying what you have.
I know, and it sounds
I know,
almost
and it sounds
obvious
almost
saying
obvious
that you don't
saying.
want people to know what you have in poker, but it's something that somehow people forget, right? Like in this
Mhm.
spot, if your opponent, before you three bet with value, you need to ask yourself, can I be perceived as bluffing, right? And if the answer is no, you probably should not be three betting. You should probably be
Hmm.
flatting or jamming, right? But if the answer is
Sure.
yes, by all means, go for it, right? So, like, say you and Sergey had history, right? Say that he knew you were out of line. That means that he might think you're capable of bluffing. So,
True.
if you guys
Mhm.
had that history and you made it like, 3,000 to go, he might think you're bluffing, which would mean he will call your three bet wider with hands that'll be good for us. And it'll
Mhm.
also mean that he might even four bet bluff against you sometimes, which we could five bet shove against with ease, right? So just make sure if you're about to three bet with ace king that it's a spot where it looks like you could be bluffing. Because if it looks like you only have value, you're not really doing yourself any favors, right? Because if this
True.
guy knew we had no bluffs, we made it 3,600 here. We're basically saying we have ace king, aces, kings, queens, jacks. That's it, And so like it's gonna be
True.
really easy for him to play accordingly against that range. So I'm with you. I love the flat call here. It
And
makes a
and
lot of
there's
sense.
and there's one more reason as well, is that he's been very, very aggro on the table. He has a VPIP of 49, which is really a lot. I don't know on how many hands, but I know the whole table has noticed that as well.
Yeah.
So by him raising and me calling, someone will squeeze way faster, knowing that the opener has a very weak range and that I might be calling because I know that he's already weak. So it also invites the possibility to squeeze like faster. So it's also kind of a meta game. But yeah,
Well
so
said.
it
Yeah.
just made sense to call here with the ace king.
Absolutely. Well said. And I think to your point more, knowing that he's crazy, people might be flatting ace 10, ace jack, king queen, king jack suited stuff in your spot. And I think that's a lot of what a three better might expect you to have. They'll
Mm-hmm.
expect you to be capped. They will not expect you to have ace king or better type
Exactly.
stuff. So I think that's another what reason this plays into our benefit. So well said. I love it. So yeah.
So we're going to see what's happened. And so this guy, the King Cameron raises. So as expected a little bit, we kind of expected that.
Yep.
And it gets folded back to the opener, who calls. And
Beautiful.
there, for me, it's an obvious shove. It's
Yep.
perfect. There's a 10K in the pot. Yeah, there's no, it makes sense. So I go in.
Yep, I love
Uh,
it. And this is exactly what we'd hoped for pre-flop. We were hoping that Victor, Cameron, or No Tilt, or even Tony, all four of them
yeah,
could very conceivably squeeze in that spot. Yeah,
totally.
Feraldo's in the small blind, but we know he's a really good regular as well. So I think everyone's capable of squeeze bluffing in that
It's a
spot.
good table. So it's like, yeah, it's expected. I would squeeze there, right?
Yep.
So I'm thinking, so the squeezer falls,
And I think
and
Sergey's call is really good for us too, because I think it would actually be probably a savvy call with aces by him, but I don't
yeah,
expect him to have aces or
well, I
kings
would
very
really not.
often
I really
ever.
don't
So
expect it at all. I
I would
really don't
say
expect
he's
it at all.
capped at like jacks or tens probably there.
The
Ace
truth is, I don't
queen,
care
ace
anymore.
jack.
I don't care anymore because I already know what I'm doing here. You know what I mean? Yeah, he could have, but I think he's capped at, like, he can have a lot. Um,
I think
and
you're
he
right that his range does not matter here. Yeah, you're right.
it doesn't matter. And he calls, and we're gonna see what he had. He had ace
Yeah,
queen,
makes
so
sense.
it
I
was
think ace queen makes
perfect.
sense from him there to
Yeah,
call the pre-flop bet and to call your shove. I mean, the only other hands that might fall into that range, like I said, would maybe be jacks at best or tens for him. And I think all three are reasonable to call in that spot. So I think his line is
100%.
fine too.
Yeah. So yeah, so I think we played it well, and I think it might have been different if we had three bet. I don't know what would have happened. He might have called, and then he would have checked the flop. He would have bet the flop. He would have folded. So in this situation, I think we took the most we could in a way. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So,
absolutely. This seems like one of the better outcomes for
yeah,
it. And, we do recognize that this play adds a little bit of variance to it. It's going to be
yeah,
tougher. Sometimes you're going to get a lot of calls in awkward post flop spots.
for sure.
But there are the positives like this where we get top end outcomes and you get a full double up in a spot where otherwise you probably wouldn't have gotten it. So I think the key here is to, again, remember when you have ace king, don't three bet based on just, feeling obligated to do so because it's ace king. Three bet
Yeah, I
because
think.
you have intention, because there's a plan, there's something you're trying to accomplish. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, no, I think it's important. Like, it's not something I would do all the time. It's not something you should do all the time. And I think that's why it's important to be aware and to be in the situation. Sometimes when you're multi-tabling, you're kind of playing a bit more ABC, and okay, an ace king is a race. But when you look really at a spot, a certain spot, I think poker is a game of common sense, and sometimes it's not what you think you should do because it's a standard thing to do, and that's the difference sometimes. This little difference will can change your whole tournament. You can
Yeah.
win a tournament thanks to this one hand, and I think that's important to
Yeah,
remember.
well said for sure. And then lastly, I'd leave it on the idea again when you have not only do you want to have intention with your ace king and have a plan with it, but if you're about to three bet with ace king, think to yourself, can I be perceived as bluffing? If the answer is no,
Hmm.
I would advise against three betting in that spot. So kind of
I
like
agree.
Mike touched on earlier, you'll see that this is going to be a lot more three betting with ace king dealing with late position, and probably some more flats to hopefully open up stuff like we just saw here when dealing with early positions. So really good hand, Mike. Awesome talk, and
Thanks.
hope you guys enjoyed this video. Best of luck out there, everyone. See you guys.
Bye, guys.